Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from. You're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Ali Osise, and it's a pleasure to be back here after being away for almost a month on other, assignment. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Sidi Sidi. Good to have you, and by the way, Happy New Year. It's been a quite interesting 2021, right? 2022 rather.
Oh, you are still there. Yeah? Happy New Year to you, Ali, and to everybody, and to our viewers as well. Good to have you back. I did miss you.
Indeed. But I've been following you. You've been doing a fantastic job with
Thanks
Sulaiman
so much.
Dabo, and then that's the beauty of teamwork. I mean, when one is away, others step in. And then, like I said, once again, Happy New Year to all our viewers, and thank you so much for being part of this program for the past year, and we're looking forward to another exciting, 2023. Well, our guest this week, there's no better way to start the new year than having this guest in the studio. And our guest is nobody but Mr. Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, who was recently sworn in as the new president of the ECOWAS Commission. By the way, Dr. Toure is a seasoned diplomat and a development professional. For several years, he has served as the Gambia's permanent representative at the AU and United Nations. Equally, he has served as the Gambia's Minister of Foreign Affairs. He holds a PhD in international relations. By the way, he has a rich biography as far as his professional career is concerned. He was sworn in, like I said, last month, December, during the ordinary summit of the ECOWAS Heads of State and Government in Abuja. Dr. Toure, thank you so much for coming on the State of Affairs program.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you finally.
Thank you very much.
We've been having exchanges since last year, July,
Indeed.
Arranging this interview, and finally you're here today.
Thank you very much. I'm most honored to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the program. Like I said, let's start. When this whole process started, the Gambia was on the next line for, to occupy this very important but critical position in the running of the ECOWAS Commission. How did it all came about? How were you identified for this position?
Thank you very much, Mr. Cisse. Please allow me to wish your audience a very happy new year. We pray that the year brings a lot of solutions to the various problems we face with in the region and at individual levels. Actually, the process started some time ago when it was clear that the rotation provided for by the rules would favor the Gambia, and it was the Gambia's turn to field a candidate for this position, and government took it upon itself to look at potential candidates, and I was one of the candidates looked at for this position, and the lot has fallen on me, and I am very much honored by that, and I think it's the right occasion to once again express my gratitude to the President, the government, and the people of the Gambia for this mark of confidence.
Yes, thank you very much. That's quite interesting there, how it all came about. But like I said, today our engagement with you will focus on the current state of the sub-region, with much emphasis on the political and security situation of the sub-region, the pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, trade and free movement of people. We have seen the unconstitutional change of government within the ECOWAS sub-region. As a new president, what sort of a commission did you take over from your predecessor, Zain Kasibro?
As you know, we've been in office since July. Yeah. That's when our commission was appointed by, in my own case, by the heads of state, and in the case of the vice president and the other members of the commission, by the council. Of course, council's decision was endorsed by the heads of state. We took over a commission which was faced with a number of challenges, challenges at the regional level and also at the institutional level. The predecessors have done a very good job in the circumstances, because I think you are alive to the realities of the region. A number of 2 or 3 coup d'etats, some attempts And in addition to that, you had security challenges, terrorism here, you have armed rebellion there, kidnapping and what have you. Then you have ecological problems that have led to serious intra-community or intercommunal crisis, where you have the herder farmer crisis in some member countries. So this is the context within which we came into office, and it has allowed us to review the regional context properly, as well as the various instruments that are in place. And at the end of it all, we have come up with our own vision or our own strategic objectives, which are based on the Vision 2050 that's already in place, and then the community strategic framework. So what we have done is to tease out what we think is really critical, because ECOWAS is about everything, so you really need to focus a little bit, and that is the focus we are trying to bring to the table. First, we have identified 4 strategic objectives for our 4-year mandate, and that is why we call this the Commission's 4x4. The first strategic objective is, of course, enhance peace and security. Certainly the reason for this is obvious to everybody. And the second strategic objective is deeper integration, which is actually supposed to be the core business of ECOWAS. The third is good governance, and the fourth is sustainable and inclusive development. The reason for all these is really very clear, but perhaps we'll have the opportunity to elaborate a little bit on each of them. In addition to those 4 strategic objectives, we have identified 2 key enablers. We feel that all these objectives will be supported by capable institutions. By capable institutions, I mean the community institutions, community resources, community processes. So for us, when we're talking about capable institution, this is what we mean. And again, I can come back to this. And the second enabler is equitable partnerships. Certainly, we all know how important partnerships are to our countries, individually and collectively. But the partnership needs to be recalibrated so that it creates winners, not winners and losers. So this is why for us equitable partnership is very important. So in a nutshell, this is the context in which we've taken over, and now this is the new strategy we have embarked upon since our arrival, and as you know, the leaders have endorsed these strategic objectives. So it is now really a question of implementing them.
We will deal with these strategies one by one. We will start with, like you said, enhance peace and security within the sub-region. You talk about, the terrorist attacks, that's happening within the sub-region. Early in July last year, your predecessor, Zain Khalid Kasibros said, between January and April of last year, there were 1,051 incidents with 2,135 fatalities. That's quite huge. How do you intend to address this, the issue of peace and security, which is a threat?
Right. This is a major problem, not only for the region, but for the entire world, depending on the source of insecurity that we are looking at. And here I'm looking at terrorism. Yeah. We have identified close to 6-7 sources of insecurity in the region. But terrorism is a major source of insecurity in the region. And the figures that Dr. Brew mentioned last year have actually increased. To close to 3,000 fatalities over the past 12 months. So it is a serious problem. Now, in the case of terrorism, a number of measures have been planned. As you know, the leaders in the last summit have agreed to put together a regional force that will support member countries face terrorism as well as threats to constitutional order. So that is one way. Certainly, we have our ECOWAS plan of action on terrorism, which seeks to really coordinate our activities at regional level to face terrorism. In addition to that, you have parallel processes like the Accra Initiative, which seeks to coordinate the efforts of the Sahelian countries as well together with those on the coast. As you know, when you look at it, for many people, terrorism is only a Sahelian issue. Yeah. It is not a Sahelian issue alone. As we speak, we have some member countries which have lost about 50% of their territory to terrorism, or to terrorist or armed rebellion, conflict. Now, if those countries serve as strong foothold to terrorists, nothing will stop them from going downwards, going to the coast. So this is why it is important that the countries work together, and the Accra Initiative is one such framework that is supposed to create that collaboration, in addition to ECOWAS's own plan of action on terrorism. What is also interesting is member states have realized that very often plans would be established, but then funding will not be forthcoming. What has changed now is that we are no longer going to rely entirely on external funding for our own peace and security. We have been instructed as a commission to think creatively as with regard to funding for the peace support operations, or the preventive diplomacy, or post-conflict crisis management that we will be involved in. So for terrorism, this is what I can say, that leaders have really taken these bold initiatives. And as you would recall, immediately after the summit, the chiefs of defense staff met in Bissau and have come up with important recommendations that we will be taking to the ministers and subsequently to the heads of state.
I guess my
thank you very much.
Co-host CD wants to come in here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toure. I just take you quick. For us, I mean, when you talk about the president of ECOWAS Commission, many don't actually know your role. And I think it would be fair for you to actually enlighten our viewers that the role of the president of ECOWAS Commission.
Very well. The president of the commission is the chief executive officer of all ECOWAS institutions. The person is appointed by heads of state and government and reports to heads of state and government. Of course, administratively, of course, through the council and some representatives of member states. As the chief executive officer, I am the key authorizing officer for the community's budget, the community's administrative as well as development budget. And the officer in charge of the staff, which as we speak is about 944 staff in the community institutions. In addition to being the chief executive officer, you're also the political head and the key representative of the community vis-a-vis the international world. So it is quite an important role. And this is why this sense of responsibility is quite a big one. And I'm just grateful that this role has been assigned to me. And again, I appreciate
congratulations. Just to bolster it further, can you explain further as far as the political and economic reasons for this ECOWAS bloc?
Right. As you know, ECOWAS was established in 1975. And the objective is to integrate the region. As you know, we are 15 member states. Each of us, apart from Nigeria, we are all small states. We don't have the market that is required to allow our economies to take off. We don't have the political strength individually that would allow our countries to be reckoned at the international level. So our forefathers found it important to establish ECOWAS, not only ECOWAS, but regional blocs, which will eventually lead to what we call the African Union. So it is kind of a building block to our continental union that we all dream about, or all our forefathers have dreamt about, this Pan-African unity. And I think the idea of the regional blocks is to do it gradually at the regional level and then move on to the continental level. Now, politically, we are stronger as a union or as a region when we work together. And economically, as I've said, we create more space, a bigger market for our economies. This will allow for economies of scale because, a small country like the Gambia, if an investor is coming here, he would be most interested in looking at the size of the market. Now, if you tell an investor we are 2 million, but then our market is 400 million, certainly that is a good attraction. So this is the whole essence of regional blocks, regional integration. First, you go from free trade arrangements, which we are at, and then move on to customs union and eventually to political union. I think basically this is what I can say about the use
quickly,
of
finally, you talked about security. Ali earlier talked about security and all that. We have seen, we have made some gains. You know, when we were young, we've seen quite a lot of coup d'etats in the bloc. It comes a time when it fades out.
Yes.
You know, we made some gains, the democracy and all that. But it seems as we are losing those gains. Instead of consolidating those gains, you know, capitalizing on those gains, we are losing grip on those gains. Why? Why is it that after a phase of, you know, coup d'etats, change of governments, through the barrel, and we made those gains, and now we're taking back step, you know, going back to where we were in those dark days, politically? Why?
I think the answer to that is still very elusive in the sense that you don't have one explanation, one explanation for the coming back of the military governments or the military to politics. I fully agree up to a certain point. I mean, some of us have written a little bit on this to show that really our governance regimes have reduced the number of coup d'etats to zero at some point.
Yes.
Before that, certainly up to 1990, 1999, coup d'etats, I mean, we had military governments, but then after the Lomé Declaration of the AU and of course ECOWAS's own instruments on good governance, we have the military governments or military coup d'etats really almost died down. Yeah. The resurgence can be explained in one way by perhaps the changes in the geopolitics. That cannot be ignored because where you have the democratic forces standing against a military government, you have other partners who are embracing them. And that creates that is an encouragement. That is one thing. The second thing also is perhaps the popular disenchantment, rightly or wrongly, but there is a degree of popular disenchantment. But I cannot put this to, let's say, civilian governments tampering with constitutions or anything. I mean, if you look at the countries in our region, the three transitional governments, Burkina Faso, certainly we had a democratic alternance there not long ago. Mm-hmm. A democratic government came through the normal processes. In Mali, we had a democratic government. Now, you have the problem of insecurity, terrorism, which created a lot of breakdown in terms of governance. And this has given way to given some grounds to the military to take over in those countries. In one country, for example, in Guinea, people would put the blame on perhaps the former president's tampering with the constitution, but that is only one. I mean, we have other countries.
When you have weak governance, mm-hmm. would that not be a source for, like you said, the chanting of this? That's one. And two, mm-hmm. when our political leaders or political instruments mm-hmm. actually wants to stay in power for the longest time, mm-hmm. where this is something that has been spoken in all quarters, especially in ECOWAS, for term limits. Mm-hmm. We've seen the gains that term limits have done. You know, we've seen Nigeria, for example. There have been so many coups d'etats, mm-hmm. but they've worked so hard to consolidate those gains of democracy mm-hmm. and put those instruments in place. Mm-hmm. I think ECOWAS could have done more by pushing this, of course, the sovereign republic, but they're part of your commission. And they are signatories to some of these things. So you probably could have done better in order to stop some of this, what we have seen recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, Mr. Cisse, we need to be very clear about is we have at the moment three transitional governments in the sub-region run by a military government. How many of those gave poor governance or the plan of an incumbent to stay in power as the excuse for their taking over? Apart from Guinea, you don't have it. Burkina Faso, we had a democratic election there. And the democratic
terrorism there.
Yeah, but then the terrorism has
and
nothing...
in Mali as well.
But terrorism, in my view, has nothing to do with poor governance. Terrorism is an insecurity challenge that can face any country. So using terrorism as an excuse, I mean, most of them would actually find out subsequently that they don't even have solution to those terrorist crises. Solutions which are different from what civilians have. So insecurity is insecurity. It weakened the states, and it gave justification for takeover, only for those governments to realize that actually we don't even have a solution.
So you mean terrorist groups don't look at weak states and take advantage of that?
Listen, terrorism is a global menace. Mm-hmm. It's a global threat.
But they are complex. You cannot compare the terrorism, say, in Afghan mm-hmm. or the terrorism in the Middle East compared to what is happening in Mali or in Burkina Faso. They may have similarity in ideologies here and there, but it's completely different. I just, you've wrote a couple of articles on some of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is an egg and chicken situation. You don't know whether it is terrorism which has weakened the state, or the weak state that has created the terrorist resurgence in the sub-region. But Mr. Sisa, I can tell you it is a very complex situation. You have strong countries with mighty military power who had to battle terrorists for years, and that one we all know. So you're dealing with people who have ideological position totally different from the rest of the population. So it's whether you're weak or not, they are just looking for any opportunity to cause havoc. So it is not the weakness of the state. They weaken the state, certainly. But anybody who takes over or capitalize on that to take over would realize immediately that they themselves have no solution to those problems.
Let me come in here. I mean, you talk about how terrorists help in creating creating that breakdown in governance. I mean, what approach do you intend to take in trying to engage these terrorist groups to bring out peace and stability? Because they're also part of us, they're from communities. How do you intend to engage them? Because what we have seen previously, they weren't that much engaged. I mean, all that we do is seeing the ECOWAS engaging the authorities and not the terrorists themselves. What approach do you intend to take to engage them?
Listen, this is up to the heads of state as to what they want to really undertake regarding some of these militants. But what I can say is some of them are not even in a position to negotiate. I mean, it is do or die. So if you're dealing with other forms of armed insurgents, perhaps you can listen to their objectives and see how best you can negotiate and come to terms. I am not aware of any group that has favored a dialogue. It is either our way or the highway. So with regard to the terrorist groups, other sources of insecurity can be addressed through dialogue, preventive diplomacy, which we are working on very much. The early warning center we just established in the Gambia here is part of our peace and security architecture to enable us to detect challenges ahead and see how best we can address them. Other problems like political tension, political crisis, all these things can be picked up quickly and then addressed through dialogue and reconciliation. For terrorists, to be frank, I don't know how, other than meeting them through military means. To address them. That is the only way. I mean, I'm not a specialist in this area, but this is what I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ture. Well, viewers, you're reminded that you're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we're broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Cisse. We'll go with a short break, and when we return, we discuss other issues around ECOWAS. Of course, free trade. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, the Russia-Ukraine war impact on the sub-region. These are all issues that we will discuss here. And of course, the delayed eco currency. Stay tuned, we'll be back soon.
ECOWAS Motors is the largest and most modern auto service in the Gambia. ECOWAS Motors is the only authorized dealer in Chevy, Mercedes-Benz trucks, Mercedes-Benz buses, Kia, Ford, Futon Mini and Midi buses, Futon trucks. At ECOWAS Motors, we have qualified professionals who use modern technology to diagnose and repair all brands of motor vehicles. ECOWAS Motor services include auto sales, auto repairs, vehicle painting, availability of high-quality spare parts. Towing services. We are reachable at any time. Call Espas Motors on 352222 353-4444 or locate us on the Bertel-Harding Highway. Espas Motors.
Hello viewers, welcome back from that short break. You're watching QTV. This is your State of Affairs program, your flagship political program. I am Aliou Cisse, and here with me is my co-host, Mr. Sidi Cisse. And our guest this week is Mr. Dr. Umar Aliou Toure, the president of the ECOWAS Commission. Doctor, let's now move forward and try to look at the issue of good governance. I mean, my colleague here said he talked about the issue of term limits. I mean, I remember when you appeared before the ECOWAS parliamentarians in Abuja, this question was asked as to what reason or what plan do you have in terms of creating that, that uniformity as far as term limit is concerned, because for many they believe that's a receipt for the the unconstitutional change of government that we are seeing within the sub-region. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it is important to appreciate the efforts of the community and the community leaders and what at the moment is being done. I just want to refer to the communique of the 4th of December summit, which clearly stipulates or makes reference to the ongoing process to bring together a supplementary protocol on terms of governments. Now, this is a work in progress. As we speak, we as a commission have been mandated by the authority of heads of state to continue to engage member states so that we will have a consensus on this matter. ECOWAS operates on consensus basis. It suffices for one country to object to a position, and that position will not be adopted until a consensus is built. With regard to the term limit, this is the situation. For now, we don't have consensus on it. We are working to build consensus. And I can tell you there is a lot of goodwill out there. There is no open hostility to term limit. It is a question of ensuring that whatever is agreed upon at the regional level is implementable at the national level.
When you have national constitutions that do not have term limit, is that not worrying for you? When you talk about a concession, you've been given the authority by heads of state to do that. And they're the very heads of state who have not created that avenue of creating term limits in their constitutions.
The regional process is one thing, national processes are another thing. Now, for us, we are looking at the regional processes. What we are looking at is the regional instrument regarding term limits. This is why we are engaging member states to build consensus. And once consensus is built around the regional instrument, it would be a question of domesticating whatever is agreed upon at the regional level and applying it at the national level. So we are focusing on the regional instruments. Okay. And once this is done, it is a question of...
You talked about your early warning signs. And right. I think this is not only just to do with climate, this is not only just to do with global warming, even security as well. You have a body that sits under you as your security experts and institution that is answerable to your office. Is it not by time to be more proactive?
In what sense?
As far as security is concerned. Because places that we've mentioned earlier, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, we saw it happening. It is not like it happened overnight. That here is a coup d'état happening in Guinea or in Mali. With the intelligence, as far as your military, institution is concerned, as ECOWAS is concerned. I think when they step ahead, they can detect some of these things. Oh, they may detect it, but pay a death to it. I don't want to speculate, but I think when it comes to early warning sign, as far as some of these troubles are concerned, they could actually do something.
Yeah, I want us to make a clear distinction between the coup d'etats, which are certainly sources of insecurity, and terrorism that we are talking about. the early warning centers or process itself is supposed to help us identify threats to human security, including coup d'etats and everything, but they are not intelligence outfits. I want to be very clear about that. The early warning centers are not intelligence outfits. They are supposed to be able to tell you, listen, in this part of the country, we do see drought happening, and what does that imply for our security? Would it mean the farmers and herders may have some issues because with drought, of course, livestock will have to move? What implication would that have in terms of communal relations? So this is the type of work that the early warning centers will be doing, not intelligence gathering. But if I may just come to this. Now, as I said, in both Burkina Faso and Mali, the government there were elected through a democratic process. So nobody came there and said they were not democratically elected. Terrorism, which happened independently around the world, weakened the state in our regions. Not only in those two countries, what baffles
me, Doctor, all these countries that you've just mentioned, when the coup did happen, people were in celebration. Why? These are ordinary people from their homes, from their businesses, take to the streets and celebrate for the change of government.
Well, let me say.
So there must, for me, I see a disconnection between governance and the people, between governments and the people.
Yeah, well, let me make something a hint at another source of insecurity in our sub-region, just to draw a connection with to what you are saying now. In our judgment, and I've made this, I've said this at the international level, that fake news is a source of insecurity. Yeah. Some of those popular agitations were the outcome of fake news, or the results of fake news. I'll give you an example. I went to Burkina Faso as president of the ECOWAS Commission with our mediator for Burkina Faso, which is the former president of Niger, President Yusuf. Because of fake news, we were prevented from leaving the airport. The head of state had to come to the airport to have a meeting with us, because it was, some people spread the information that we were going there to install a new government or to, all sorts of things. So seeing a group of people jubilating or celebrating does not give you a fuller picture. It might just show you, of course, fake news. Those behind it are extremely seasoned, and they have more audience than your station here. So I just want to say that, yes, there were scenes of people jubilating, but it was not the whole story.
Let's now move to something very important, the issue of trade and free movement of people, Doctor. This is something that people still believe, we still have a long way to go as far as the issue of free trade and, of course, the free movement of people within the ECOWAS sub-region. How do you intend to address this issue? It remains a concern for many.
Right. As I said at the beginning, our core business is really to integrate the region through trade, economic unification, single currency, and what have you. Now, with regard to trade, there are a number of problems. First, you have in the ECOWAS free trade zone, we are a free trade zone. Our objective is to create a customs union eventually. And we have what we call non-tariff issues. This can be, this may relate to infrastructure. We have difficulty trading among ourselves. As we speak, Intra-community trade is about 12%, nothing more. When it is really good, it hovers around 13, 14%. Regions that are better integrated have their inter-regional trade at around 60%. This is the case of the European Union. So for us, we have a long way to go. And this is for West Africa, and for Africa as a whole, it is under 20%. Intracontinental trade. So you have problems of infrastructure. It is extremely expensive to travel within the sub-region.
I mean, it's a nightmare, not just difficult, but a nightmare.
So that translates to expensive trade, expensive business. So that is one thing. The other thing is other non-tariff barriers like bottlenecks. You travel across, you find roadblocks, you find unofficial charges or what have you. So all these things are non-tariff barriers that we are working on.
I mean, going through all this,
yes.
I mean, it seems as your commission is not in charge. One.
No,
and
no.
two,
Yeah,
when you talk about all these infrastructures, flying to any of these blocks,
yes.
As far as ECOWAS is concerned, it's cheaper for me to fly to London than to go to, one of these countries just around the corner.
Right. Let me just.
And when you talk about trade,
right.
I mean, how can we do these things?
Yeah. So that is what I'm.
That's what he's trying to explain.
Right. I'm trying to explain. So I've talked about the difficulties relating to infrastructure. But then, and then of course the soft component, which is these roadblocks that are all over affecting intra-community trade. But then you have our own capacity to produce the trade. We have supply side constraints that are real. You see, let me just say this. Having a free trade area does not mean you can just pick up anything and sell. There are rules that must be observed.
Yeah.
The rules of origin are important in a free trade arrangement. Now, if you don't have anything in your compound to sell to me, you cannot go and bring from somebody's compound something they have produced and sell to me. No, you must add value to it. The rules of origin are complex arrangements that would ensure that what you are selling to me is actually produced by you, or a good chunk of it, a good component of it is produced by you. So our own capacity to produce is limited. And this is what brings me to the question of investment. We need to invest heavily
but when you look at agriculture,
yes.
For example, we sit here, we talk about Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the amount of people who lives in Ukraine and in our block. I mean, it's, it's...
I wouldn't want to pay, but I know Doctor was coming to that end. But when you talk about investment...
we need to speed up with Doctor.
I know Doctor was coming to that.
So you see...
So Doctor, I don't understand. For all these years, ECOWAS has been in existence.
Yes.
We still cannot invest. You talk about investment, great. But, I mean, the talking has been a lot. Let's do the work.
Well, that is what we are doing.
No.
Let's push Doctor.
Talk about investment. I'm sure Doctor was heading to that. The impact of the Russia-Ukraine war. And of course,
Indeed. What we are doing really, as you know, these regional arrangements have their limitations. What we can do is build consensus on key interventions, key areas, and then encourage member countries to implement those. Now, if you look at agriculture, if you look at health, there are regional instruments that encourage countries to devote a certain amount of their national budgets to agriculture. Now, implementation is an issue here, and then some, real constraints. Countries have constraints. We must face it. Now, if you don't invest, you won't be able to produce, to sell at the regional level.
At ECOWAS body.
Now, ECOWAS invests on enablers, roads. For example, I was going to come to this. At the moment, we are working on two main corridors. The Lagos-Abidjan corridor and Abidjan-Dakar Praia corridor, which includes the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. So these are the main trade corridors we are working on. The Lagos-Abidjan corridor alone accounts for 60% of intra-community trade. So this is why we are putting in a lot of emphasis on this. We are just coming from the World Bank, and these are areas we are discussing very seriously with these countries. Other enablers ECOWAS is investing in is these regional power networks. I mean, you are aware that Gambia, other countries are getting electricity from other countries. It's not only Gambia. It is a business. It is a big thing in the region. And I think whenever you visit Benin, please visit the West Africa Power Pool and see what is happening there.
That's the WAP.
I can tell you what is happening there is amazing. We just need to do a lot of communication so that people know what is happening. So these are the type of areas that ECOWAS invests in. We create the enabling environment for our region to thrive. Now, you look at other areas like health. We have the West African Health Institution, and what they have done during the pandemic, I mean, is amazing.
Yeah, quickly, the monetary union time frame as far as this ECO is concerned. I mean, others are saying you've just been doing a talking shop.
No.
As far as this is concerned.
I think
that's what Chris is saying.
I think that's not a fair assessment.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not saying it. This
yeah.
is
whoever is saying it is not being fair to the community.
Okay, then
now let me say this.
Yes.
Our leaders want to have an a single currency by 2027.
Okay.
This is the timeline. But economists would tell you for countries to create single currencies, there are certain criteria they need to work on. These are the convergence criteria. You have to have certain fundamentals right. Otherwise, just the political decision will create a problem for you. I can tell you, people did ask me this before, why is it that politicians can't just take a decision and create a single currency? For now, we have the UMOA, which is which has its own single currency, and then the non-UMOA members of ECOWAS, the WAMZ countries. There are criteria we need to work on. First, we have to make sure our public debts are under control, inflation is under control, and other criteria. Now, you know the situation since COVID. Our countries have been hit by inflation, energy price, food price inflation, and not only our countries, but the whole world. That will really slow down our move towards...
So 2027 is realistic?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying it will slow down our move towards meeting the criteria with regard to public debt, with regard to inflation and all that, because some of this is really not within our control. This is what people need to understand. I mean, inflation is a global phenomenon. Countries have been trying as much as possible to manage it, but wherever you are, I mean, you are faced with price inflation, food price, energy price, really what they call the headline inflation.
Infrastructure. One thing is I'm very passionate about. I hate going to Europe for holiday. I want to have holiday in Africa, primarily in the ECOWAS bloc. When can Aliu and I, jump on a plane and just pay, I mean, maybe $5,000 or less to fly to another ECOWAS bloc? Yeah,
I think that's a dream of all of us. That is the
we've
dream.
We've been dreaming for this for so long.
I know. It is frustrating.
You pay 10 pounds to fly to Aberdeen, or you fly to Sweden. Why not us?
Yeah, I know. It is really very frustrating to all of us. I'll give you an example. It is cheaper to ship a consignment from Japan to Abidjan than from Addis Ababa to Abidjan. And really, the reason for this can be explained. It can take you forever to go to. But let me just say: A, the scale is not there. B, the infrastructure is not there. And so this is what the main problem.
Where does ECOWAS make their money?
In what sense?
Yeah, your commission.
Well, our commission is, we have what we call community levy.
Yes.
That each country collects on our behalf and finances ECOWAS, and what we're trying to do is 35% for administration and 65%.
So you want to rely on that? You don't want to go into avenues of generated income for the commission?
Well, this is the main source of income for ECOWAS, and of course with our partners we do have a substantial amount of money.
You earlier said about after the COVID, our governments are actually struggling.
Yes.
So if you want to rely on a struggling country to foot your bills, the tendency is you may start looking at other partners like the EU and AU and all those other
external partners.
But I think ECOWAS as a body must actually do more than just relying on handouts.
No, it's not a handout.
I mean, I see it as a handout.
No, it is not. It is, ECOWAS is your community, and it is being paid for by you and I.
I know that bit.
So
we have struggling economies.
Right.
The Gambia, you name all
Yes.
the bloc is really struggling.
Yes.
You talked about it.
Yes.
So if we are struggling and we cannot meet, the payments of our contribution, then you have a problem.
Well, I can tell you so far we don't have that problem.
But the citizen might struggle. We may struggle. Probably if we don't have to give them money to ECOWAS, or half of that to ECOWAS, it could have gone into our infrastructural development.
Well, let me put it this way. The ECOWAS is being funded by community levy. The trade that takes place in the region, 0.5% of it is considered the community levy. As you know, I mean, when you go to ports, you hear about ECOWAS tax, ECOWAS tax. This is what is financing ECOWAS. So if you look at the EU or any government, governments raise tax to run their business. So this is how ECOWAS raises tax to run its business. So if you, Mr. Cisse, can get your ID card here, travel all the way to Lagos without a visa, and nobody questions you, it shows there is a community here. And that is something that people should not forget about. I served in East Africa for many years. Try to travel within East Africa.
Have you ever come across anybody who have used the ID card from Gambia to...
The brown card?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Certainly.
How many troubles do they have to go through? A lot of troubles.
No, well,
in fact, your pocket have to let you go. You have to keep bribing.
Now, this is why I'm telling you, I talked about non-tariff barriers. Unofficial activities by individuals should be divorced or should be considered separately from the official reality. Now, if somebody forces you, even with your diplomatic passport, to pay something, that's a different thing. But the rules are something else. These are individuals behaving wrongly.
That's wrong.
I know we're running out of time. And then, aside from your 4x4, I mean, you talk about the two cross-cutting enablers, you talk about capable institutions, and you said equitable partnership. What sort of ECOWAS institutions will you like to leave behind at the end of your term? Talk about the issue of capable institutions. Yeah,
for us, capable institutions are extremely important, and here we are looking at two main things. We are looking at the resources and the processes. The resources include human and financial resources. We want to make sure our institutions are manned by the right fits, the right caliber of people. So there we are trying to bring in, or at least reform the institutions so that the right people are in the right places. And if we can't find the right people within the institutions, we will source them from outside. That is one thing. The second thing is our financial resources. We want to make sure our financial resources are put to the best use. Once you have these two things in an institution, you can count yourself lucky. It would be, this is how you will create a capable institution. Our processes also need to be looked at in parallel with the resources. By processes, I'm looking at our compliance, our
You have
procurement.
non-state compliance.
We're running out of time, please.
Yeah.
Allow to
Yeah.
finish,
So,
please.
talking about the compliance with the rules, we're talking about our procurement to ensure that whatever we are doing, we're doing it really in accordance with our rules. So, processes, human resources, and financial resources, these three pillars will enable us to create the the capable institution that we think we want to leave behind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toure. There's no better way to end the program than that. And thank you very much once again, Dr. Umar Aliou Toure, the President of the ECOWAS Commission. Thank you so much for coming on the program once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cisse. Thank you, Mr. Cisse. Thank you very much.
Non-compliance, but we haven't allowed him to go.
And Mr. Sidi, thank you.
No, but there's
I
something
miss you,
important.
honestly.
Talking about compliance, but it's okay. We leave that to go.
Well, viewers, thank you very much for watching this program. You can also follow the repeat on Sunday at 10 a.m. On behalf of the production team, I was your host, Aliou Cisse. Until then, join us next week. Bye-bye.